The contents of this webinar were developed under a grant H421F240198 from the U.S. Department of Education Department. The department does not mandate or prescribe practices, models, or other activities described or discussed in this document. The contents of this webinar may contain examples of, adaptations of, and links to resources created and maintained by another public or private organization. The department does not control or guarantee the accuracy, relevance, timeliness, or completeness of this outside information. The content of this webinar does not necessarily represent the policy of the department. The publication is intended to represent the views or policy of or be an endorsement of any expressed views.
All right, I have to say this presentation does not provide legal advice. You should discuss specific questions with your trusted financial advisor or insurance producer. Next slide. Real quick, Maryland Insurance Administration. That's the agency that Mary Jo and I work for. So who are we and why are we talking to you today? We are the regulator in the state of Maryland. That means that we make sure that the companies that operate, that the insurance companies that operate in the state of Maryland follow Maryland's laws and that they follow those policies that they've issued to you. The Maryland Insurance Administration is your state entity that you can reach out to if you have a problem with an insurance company. So a good example is, let's say you have a claim that's in process and you're not happy with something in that process, you can file a complaint with the Maryland Insurance Administration. Mary Jo and I are in the consumer education group. And so we are the group that you could seek information about insurance, just like we're doing today. So we are the insurance regulator, making sure that those agents, those brokers, and those insurance companies are following Maryland law. Next slide. Okay, so we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff today. You might need to take notes. If you have any questions, put those in the chat as you think of them, because if you try to think of them at the end, it might be kind of overwhelming. I'm going to hit on 6 or 7 different topics, and it's going to be a lot, for sure. So brace yourself for a little bit of a tiring ride, and you'll probably, if you have questions that go beyond this presentation itself, and you are going to be encouraged to work with an independent agent or broker as you pursue your own personal situation. We're going to talk about automobile insurance. We're going to talk about insurance for your stuff, your physical stuff that it takes your business to run. We're going to talk about insurance if you can't operate your business. We're going to talk about liability insurance, cyber liability insurance, a little bit about flood. And then we'll talk about the business owner policy, the package itself, as well as some tips and considerations. Next slide. I did notice that we lost the interpreter, so am I okay to keep going?
Yes.
Okay. All right, let's just get started. And if another voice comes in, that's Mary Jo. She might have a little bit to add here and there to this presentation. So an introduction to commercial insurance or business insurance. Many kinds of insurance is available to businesses, as you know. The types of insurance that you purchase for your business is going to depend on your individual risk. What kinds of risks is your company exposed to? What kinds of losses do you need to insure against? You can probably answer a lot of that. You probably know, but you do, of course, need to work with an insurance professional with the experience to help you understand what you're not thinking about. A licensed insurance producer will be able to present you with different policy and coverage options. It is important that you work with a licensed insurance producer, which producer is our word for agent or broker. Um, because they can truly help you look at the big picture and evaluate those risks that are specific to you and even possibly things that you're not thinking of. Next slide, please. So, while your business might not need all the different types of commercial coverages, it's a good idea to have the basic knowledge of the types of insurance coverages that are available. And that's what I'm here to help you with today. You're going to walk away with a basic knowledge of different types. But again, working with that independent agent or broker is what's going to really get you where you need to be. As your business changes and expands, you do need to reassess your coverage and determine what additional coverages you may wish to purchase. So have that in the back of your mind. Every year, definitely at least take a step back and look at that policy and make sure it still works for your business. Or if mid-year you do an expansion in a different direction, it's time to talk to your agent or your broker and make sure that you are covered. You do not want to expose yourself to the kind of liability, to the kind of risk liability that you can find yourself in as a business owner without proper insurance. Next slide. All right, automobile. Do you need a commercial or a personal auto policy? Um, Personal and commercial auto insurance policies do provide similar coverage, but there are distinctions. Commercial auto policies typically have higher limits than a personal automobile policy. Um, for example, a typical commercial auto policy might have a liability limit of $1 million. So that's just an easy example. For the most part, your personal auto is going to possibly have a limit of 300,000, 500,000. Those commercial policies have higher limits and many times, well beyond $1 million. A commercial auto liability insurance policy may also have provisions that cover rented and other non-owned vehicles, such as employee-owned vehicles that are driven for company business. So it is possible that you are running a business and your personal auto policy will work, but you need to check with your insurance company and make sure that that works for you. And you do need to consider the risk that you're actually exposing yourself to. And you need to consider the fact that a personal auto policy might not quite get you there. And put those questions in the chat, and I will absolutely make sure that we have time for a 15, 20-minute Q&A at the end, even if I have to talk pretty fast toward the end. Next slide. Several factors should be considered when determining whether a personal or commercial policy is appropriate. Again, consider this, consider it, but also have a conversation with your agent, broker, insurer, etc. Who owns or leases the vehicle? You or the business as an entity? If it's the business as an entity, right, that's an easy answer. Who drives the vehicle? You or your employees? How is the vehicle principally used? Is it used for transporting people, delivering packages, carrying hazardous materials? You're going to work through all that information with your agent and broker and make sure that you land in the right policy. Next slide. Do you allow your employees to take the vehicle home, or is its use restricted to work hours? So discuss these issues with your insurance producer. Talk to them about collision and comprehensive to determine what best protects your vehicle from losses and damage. So liability, that's going to protect you from that liability to others. But that collision and comprehensive, that's the insurance that's going to cover the vehicle itself. So the actual vehicle that you own and that you are using for your business is covered under the collision and comprehensive part. The liability, that's protecting you should you harm others or their personal property. Banks and other financial institutions with a security interest in your vehicle will require both comprehensive and collision coverage to protect their interest in the vehicle. That's a little bit of a wordy way of saying if you finance the vehicle, the bank is going to make sure that you're protecting their interests. So you're going to have that collision and comprehensive, and it's going to be required by the bank. If you have a van, like our van on the screen there, that you bought in cash or that you paid off, you're making the decision whether or not you're going to carry that collision and comprehensive insurance. Next slide. If your business owns or leases a vehicle, make sure the name of the business is listed on the policy declaration page as the insured. So important that the name of the business is on there on that policy declaration page. If you're relying on either a personal auto or a personal umbrella liability insurance policy to provide you with protection for your company's use of vehicles, review the policy language. So if you're thinking to yourself, well, my insurance company said it's okay, they've written the policy in such a way that I can deliver what I'm going to deliver. And yeah, I only have $100,000 in liability, but I have an umbrella policy and it covers me up to 2 million, so I'm okay. Maybe look at the language and make sure that that makes sense. Make sure that the policy is written that should $100,000 in liability on your personal policy not be enough, and theoretically you would need that umbrella policy for a claim, that it would be allowed to be used in that situation. So make sure that you've checked that language to make sure it makes sense. Many personal insurance policies exclude business-related liability claims. Stuff to think about, but if you're working with a good agent or broker, they're going to hold your hand through this process. Next slide. If your employees operate a company car, make sure that they have a good driving record and are trained properly before you entrust your company vehicle to them. Okay, so the insurance company is going to want to know their driving record. These are decisions that you're going to need to make in terms of how much risk you are going to take on. Should you hire employees without, perfect or close to perfect driving records? You're making the decision how much risk you want to take on, but the insurance company is also going to have a say in that as well. Failure to do so may expose your company to additional liability. Should the insurer not be presented with all the information? The risk presented by your employees may exceed the company's underwriting guidelines and prevent you from getting insurance with the company you desire. Which is to say, should you hire employees and should those employees have poor driving records, such that your insurer does not want to take on that risk, that could become an issue. Consider increasing insurance on your business vehicles to cover permanently attached items such as a generator or storage unit. So just think about that kind of stuff. If you are operating a food truck or something along those lines, what is permanently attached to that food truck or that van that may also need to be covered as well. Reminder to put questions in the chat. Okay. The next question is, what type of insurance do you need for your physical space and equipment? Property insurance protects small business owners from losses due to damage to their business property, including the business's physical space or equipment. So you may or may not own the physical space that you're operating out of. Let's say that, you have a store, you actually have, a business space, et cetera, that you operate on. operate out of, or storage, etc. You may or may not own it. You might just own the stuff, your business stuff. Um, for insurance purposes, business property includes the physical building in which the business resides, which you may or may not need coverage for, um, as well as the property owned by the business that is located within the business and other assets of the business. Next slide. All right. So this is a list of all the things you might want to cover. Um, as we said, the building, your inventory. If your business has inventory, furniture, equipment, it's kind of obvious, right? Machinery, computers, anything valuable, your papers, your books, your documents. And of course, like anywhere else, do you have antiques? Do you have artwork? Do you have expensive things in that building that you will likely want to insure? Anything that you have. Equipment, signs, intangible items as well. So something to keep in mind there, not as obvious. Intangible items such as trademark, copyright, other intellectual property. Talk to your agent or broker. Next slide. So there's three types of property insurance plans. There's the basic form. In a basic form, it provides coverage for losses resulting from a basic set of perils: fire, lightning, windstorm, hail, explosion. And it includes the cost of removing property to protect it from further damage. Basic form. A broad form expands, extends it to other types of perils, such as a roof collapsing, etc. So again, the basic, and then the broad gets broader, and then the special form includes basic and broad coverages, as well as other losses, except for those that are specifically listed as being excluded. There's not going to be a test afterwards. But, this is definitely something that you want to talk to your insurance agent or broker about to see what makes the most sense for yourself and for your business. Next slide. All right. You can purchase either actual cash value or replacement cost value for your property. Actual cash value, if something happens to your property, actual cash value is going to essentially pay you out what it was worth at the time of loss. So a really simple example is like the chair that I'm sitting in, and which I paid, I think, around $200 for in 2020. What's it worth today? I don't know. Maybe let's say it's worth $100. So if something happens, if I've got this insured, something happens to this chair today, and I have an actual cash value policy, I'm going to get $100 from the insurer. If I had a replacement cost value policy and say this chair now costs $300, then essentially they will replace the chair for what it costs today, and I'll get a brand new chair. Replacement cost value versus actual cash value. Next slide. I'm trying not to go too fast, but I'm trying to get through everything. Okay, this is a big one. What type of insurance do you need if you can't operate your business? So you might not even know that that was a type of insurance, but it is. And it's called business interruption insurance. So business interruption insurance is also known as business continuation insurance. It provides coverage for expenses associated with running a business, such as payroll, utility bills, when the business is unable to operate for an extended period of time, generally because of a fire or another kind of a loss that is specified in the policy. And what losses are covered, what kind of losses would be covered, and how much would be covered is going to depend on the language in your policy. And it's all going to come back to the language in your policy. It's really important as a business owner, again, that you work closely with your insurance professional and that you know what that language in your policy says. Next slide. So business interruption coverage can be added to a property insurance policy or purchased as part of a package, a business insurance package. Even if you do purchase business interruption coverage, you should be aware that this type of coverage typically is not triggered until a specific period of time has passed following a covered loss. The time period will be set forth in your policy. So to put that, I think hopefully in a little bit more plain language, it could say a week. So that first week of expenses is on you. It could say 2 weeks. That first 2 weeks of expenses is on you. Just make sure that you understand the language in your policy and make sure that makes sense. If you don't think that you could cover expenses for a week or 2 weeks, you need to talk to that agent and broker and make sure that they understand, if you're looking at business interruption coverage, you're going to need it to match what you're able to cover on your own, should something happen. Next slide. All right, so what type of insurance do you need if someone is injured or related to the operation of your business? And that is, I think, probably the one that is first and foremost on the minds of most business owners, because that's the one you hear the horror stories. You know those claims can go into the millions of dollars, and this is definitely important. And this is liability insurance, also called commercial general liability, often just referred to as CGL. This protects your business against the economic loss and expense associated with claims filed against your business for bodily injury, property damage, injury to reputation caused by slander and libel, and also the harm caused by false or misleading advertising. That's a pretty big bucket. Um, so, for example, bodily injury claims include claims for damage that result when somebody falls while visiting your business, or if you are manufacturing a product and that product itself falls or injures a person. And so just sort of, this is the coverage that covers you for what is generally a business owner's worst nightmare. Next slide, please. The CGL policy is advantageous for two reasons. First, the insurance company will defend you against a covered claim at no out-of-pocket cost for you. So your defense is included in this at no out-of-pocket cost to you. Second, if your business is found responsible, the insurer will pay at least part of, or maybe even all of, the damages owed. That's going to depend on the language in your policy. Next slide. So the amount that the insurance company pays will depend on the amount of damages and the type of damages sought. So this is a lot. Everybody, as a business owner, you're probably like, I have to learn this and I have to learn that. And now there's all these very specific insurance terms. So under that umbrella of this liability coverage, there's compensatory damages, there's non-compensatory damages, and there's punitive damages. So compensatory damages, those include expenses incurred by the claimant as a result of the injury. So under that umbrella, we have cost of medical services, lost wages, things that are measurable, quite measurable, might have an actual very specific dollar amount attached to them. Then there's non-compensatory or general damages. That includes non-monetary, doesn't have a necessarily an easy dollar amount attached to it, such as pain and suffering or mental anguish. And then in general, under these policies, punitive damages are typically not covered. Punitive damages are additional monies that are awarded as a penalty and sanction against a defendant as a form of punishment for its actions. That would be in the case of some kind of severe neglect on the case of the part of the business owner. So maybe something like you knowingly allowed someone to operate a vehicle knowing that, this person had a horrific driving history. Um, Putting people in a dangerous situation, and you as a business owner were aware that you were taking that risk. So in general, that's not going to fall under this general liability. And in general, most business owners know to avoid taking those kinds of risks because that might be coming out of their pocket. Next slide. All right, cyber liability insurance. We're doing another pivot. This type of insurance is customized to fit the particular needs of your business. The policy may cover security breaches where sensitive information is either hacked or inadvertently disclosed. For example, the policy may pay for increased expenses to provide credit monitoring for consumers. And we've all been, I guess, most of us probably have been awarded a year's worth of credit monitoring from one company or another, maybe a dozen different companies. So if you ever had to do that as a business owner, that would likely fall under your cyber liability insurance. The repair or replacement of business assets that were damaged as a result of a security breach. And that risk is real. Phishing attempts are everywhere. All of us are targets. And as well, operating the business if the security breach causes an interruption. So should your business interruption be caused by a cyber breach of some sort, that could actually fall under your cyber liability insurance as opposed to your business interruption, depending on how the policy is written. All right, and then I also am going to talk a little bit about flood insurance. And the reason I'm talking about it separately is because if you buy a policy for your building to cover your building, it's not going to cover flood insurance. Flood insurance is a separate product. It's a separate insurance product. If you are operating a business in a location where your business could be damaged by rising water, you should consider flood insurance. Property insurance policies do not cover damage caused by rising waters. Um, Even if your building isn't in a flood zone, a high risk flood zone, you still might be at risk for flooding. So it's just something to think about. It's something to be aware of. It's something that if you're talking to your agent or your broker and you know the flood risk or you have a sense of the flood risk of your property, no matter what, bring it up if they don't bring it up. You don't want to get stuck in a situation where you do have a flood to your location and you do not have coverage. Next slide. I think I have a couple on flood insurance. Yeah. Um, just a little bit of information about flood insurance because you can definitely go down the flood insurance rabbit hole on our website, insurance.maryland.gov. I'm going to put that in the chat right now so you can grab it and jot it down if you need to, uh, if it makes sense. But just so you know, flood insurance, unlike a typical, say, homeowners insurance policy, has two separate parts. One that covers the building and one that covers your things, your contents. So that's just something to know. And then something else to know is that there's a 30-day waiting period. So I say that because you don't want to get in a situation where you're not thinking about this. There's a huge storm coming. You found out that you're at risk. It's 5 days away. You can't buy flood insurance at that point. There's a 30-day waiting period, unless it's a new purchase. If it's a brand new purchase, it can be effective immediately. But otherwise, you can't just wait till a storm is on its way. There is that 30-day waiting period. Next slide. Let's see. And so the standard flood insurance policy does cover losses caused by a flood, less the insurance deductible. So we haven't talked much about deductibles, but you do want to think about your deductibles. You always want to make sure that your deductible makes sense for you. Is it where you need it to be? If $1,000 deductible makes sense to you, great. If you're like, well, I wouldn't file a claim until I had $5,000 worth of damage anyway, there's an opportunity to bump up that deductible. You bump up your deductible, you lower your premium. So just remember that. In most situations, when you bump up your deductible, you're getting a lower premium, but we always have our own personal situations, and you need to understand what works for you. And then just a little comment here. By law, the maximum allowable commercial property limit for a small business is $500,000. Most people buy flood insurance from the National Flood Insurance Program. Their max for a commercial property is $500,000. However, there are private companies out there that can write you more coverage in many cases should you need it. Next slide. All right, a business owner's policy, a package solution. So many small business owners purchase a business package policy, a BOP, that typically includes liability insurance, property insurance, business interruption, continuation insurance, and crime coverage. The packages have various types of coverage in each policy. And many insurers do customize those BOPs for specific types of business. And that is likely something that the agent or broker that you're working with will talk to you about. Next slide. You should be aware that a BOP does not cover claims of professional liability, claims arising from allegedly wrongful practice by professionals. So within the BOP, you will not find that. You will not find the auto insurance, workers' compensation, health or disability insurance, all which require separate policies to be purchased. So no auto is not going to be in the BOP, workers' comp, health slash disability, and professional liability. Next slide. Home-based business insurance. So home-based businesses, like all businesses, should be properly insured to protect the business assets and its owners against certain risks. Often, home-based businesses are underinsured, a fact the business owner usually discovers after an incident or loss occurs. So they're depending on just their regular old homeowners insurance to cover them, and they find out they either the language excludes the property that was used for the business, or they find out they just don't have enough coverage at all. So if you are operating a home-based business, it is important to understand what you have and what you need. Next slide. All right, so there's a few of these slides, tips and considerations for reducing business risk. All of these tips and considerations will not apply to everyone. So, as a small business owner, you can take steps to minimize risk in the workplace. And it is important that you do so. And your insurance company will want you to do this as well. Here are some tips that could benefit your business, employees, customers, clients. Install fire and security alarms. Plan and train employees for an emergency on the premises, such as fires and evacuations. Have your employees keep wallets and other personal items in a secure place. Keep the business's cash and other valuables in a safe. These are all pretty basic pointers, but pretty important and pretty important to your insurance company as well. Next slide. If your employees work with machinery, there's going to be rules you have to follow, such as goggles, gloves, safety gear. Follow those rules. Keep that office space in good physical condition. You're going to want to check the carpeting, railings. You're going to want to make sure that wiring is in good working condition and it's not causing any hazards. If your employees operate company cars, as we've already said, clean driving records and proper training is essential. Next slide. Review all insurance policies each year and note any changes that may affect your coverage costs. Um, and once a year is great. If nothing really changes in your business from year to year, you can probably just, wait for your yearly review. But if you have had an abrupt change mid-year, let's say you're manufacturing something and you're you started a new product line. There's some substantial change that has exposed you to more or new risk. Reach out to your insurance professional just to make sure that that risk is insured before you even start doing it. Let's see, example, your premiums could be impacted by the addition or reduction of employees, client product offerings or inventory, alterations to your business or equipment, or changed state regulations. So find out how plans differ to ensure you are purchasing the best policy for your particular business at a competitive price. That's another thing too, which I haven't really touched on much. But you definitely should feel comfortable shopping around and seeing if you can, once you know exactly what you need, you know, your agent or broker will probably shop multiple insurance companies as well. But yeah, it's important to make sure that you get the best price. You're operating a business. You're probably there to make money. Next slide. So tips and consideration for lowering property and liability insurance costs. Continued. Claim a tax deduction for your premiums on fire, casualty, and burglary insurance. Should be able to claim a tax deduction. Avoid purchasing overlapping policies. Carefully read the terms to make sure you are not covered for the same item in two separate policies. Again, working with an agent or broker usually um, reduces the chances of that happening. Next slide. All right. That only took an hour. I'm very happy that we have time for the Q&A. Maryland Insurance Administration, our toll-free number is 1-800-492-6116, and our website is insurance.maryland.gov. Our website has a consumer section that has lots and lots of information. We have brochures. We have some of our brochures are 20 or 30 pages long where you can do a deep dive. We have a commercial insurance brochure for a deep dive. We have health insurance brochures. And then, depending on your patient's level, we have short videos. If 2 or 3 minute video is what you have patients for, hey, do what works for you. Educate yourself as much as possible, and then work with that insurance professional to hold your hand and get you through the rest. What is the next slide? I think our social media. Follow us on social media like everybody else. We're on Facebook and we are on LinkedIn and all the things. And we have a great social media team, so they put out all kinds of stuff. I I'm pretty much ready for opening up for questions. Like I said earlier, I do have the director of our rapid response program, Mary Jo Rogers, with us today, but I can't wait to see your questions.
Maddie, I do have some questions in the Q&A. The first one, are there any common insurance differences that attendees from other states should look into? May they differ from what's done in Maryland?
I'll start that one out. Then I will let Mary Jo piggyback on to it. I think a lot of these are pretty standard from state to state. Your auto insurance, though, that's gonna be your big one. There's a lot of very specific auto insurance laws that change from state to state. Did you have any other comments on that, Mary Jo?
Yes, the auto is different, but the general insurance concepts are going to be consistent from state to state. If you're not in Maryland, every state has a Department of Insurance, and you can reach out to that Department of Insurance for information specific to your state. And the best way to find the contact information for your Department of Insurance is to check the National Association of Insurance Commissioners websites. It's naic.org. Again, naic.org. And there's a link to every state's Department of Insurance on their website.
Thanks, Mary Jo. And I put that in the chat, www.naic.org. To Mary Jo's point, insurance is regulated by the states. And that means that every state has a Maryland Insurance Administration. We call it a Department of Insurance. So each state has a Department of Insurance, as well as DC and our territories. And there is, with regards to most of these products, they're pretty standardized from state to state. But there's certain insurance products like auto insurance that can be actually quite different with regards to the laws from state to state. So auto insurance definitely stands out as that example.
Okay, we have some more questions. Can you explain more on the insurance in intellectual properties?
Not a lot more. I'm not sure if Mary Jo has any additional information.
Generally, if you purchase property coverage, business or commercial property coverage, intellectual properties are often included in that coverage. So you would have some coverage under business property coverage, again, speak to your producer. Or if you've purchased business property coverage, read your policy to see what is covered, what limitations there are. But that may be something you want to specifically address with your producer to make sure you have adequate coverage if that is a large part of your business, is intellectual properties.
The next question, where there is separation of business use versus personal use. If you were going to lunch and going home from non-work social event, you went after work. So basically what I think is being asked, where is the separation of business use versus personal use? Maybe in a vehicle?
Patty, you want me to take that one?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. First of all, if your vehicles are owned by the business, you're going to want to insure them under a commercial policy as a business. If you have a personal vehicle, it's not going to be insured. Part-time is personal use and part-time with commercial use. You're going to pay a rate, or the premium is going to be developed as a commercial. So it may be your personal car. You may be delivering goods with using your personal car, but you're also using it to go out for social events, go to the grocery store, the doctor. There's really no separations, and you don't have to say, well, I use it 50% for commercial and 50% for personal. If it is a vehicle that is owned by the business, you want to insure it as a vehicle owned by the business under a commercial auto policy. If it is your personal auto that is used sometimes for personal use and sometimes for commercial use, then it will be rated as commercial use, and it won't matter what you're actually using that vehicle for at the specific time the loss occurred. You just have coverage for it, no matter which purpose you're using it for.
So, Mary Jo, if I can just ask for clarification. So that is generally, we can consider that to be the way it works basically all the time? Or is this a situation where somebody should make absolutely sure that the language in their policy, well, again, we're talking about differences in laws from state to state too, because I'm guessing that this is somebody who's worried about, yeah, I got a commercial policy, but like on Saturday, I'm taking my kids to a soccer game and I get into an accident. So you're saying that for the most part, that would be an okay way to use a policy that is insured under your commercial policy?
It would be generally, it's still a private passenger auto policy, but it's rated. That means the premium is developed, how much they're going to charge you based on it being used sometimes for commercial use. This generally would apply that you use your personal auto and maybe you make something. And sometimes you use your personal auto to deliver what it is that you've made, whether it's artwork or a craft, or you are a seamstress. So sometimes you use your car to deliver your product to a customer, but other times you use the car to take the kids to soccer on Saturday. It's not going to matter. The policy is it's not going to break it down like you use it Monday through Friday for business purposes, 9 to 5, and in the evenings and on the weekends, you use it for personal use. It's rated with commercial use. So whenever you need to use it for the personal use, it's fine. Whenever you use it for commercial use. And you see that where that car is used, might be the only vehicle the business has, and it's used sometimes for commercial purposes and sometimes for personal. And it would be covered either way if you have a commercially rated private passenger auto policy.
Thank you, Mary Jo.
Great. Next question. Does liability insurance only apply to bodily injury or for customers, or does it include employees?
I can answer that one too, Patty.
Go for it.
Liability coverage is not going to cover your employees unless you physically harmed your employees. You physically attack them or you cause slander. So generally, if an employee is injured while they are working, whether it's your fault or not, they tripped over the carpet and fell and broke their arm in the office. They were injured in a car accident, delivering your product. You're gonna need a workers' comp policy for that. Liability insurance is going to be for customers or other people that are accidentally harmed or injured, not employees. Employees would need to be covered under a workers' comp policy for injuries resulting from their employment. Unless, again, you've hit your employee, you got mad and injured them, struck them. You see that sometimes in sexual harassment situations where an employee claims they were sexually harassed or slander. You fired an employee and posted all over Facebook personal information. But generally, if someone is injured in the course of employment, that needs workers' comp.
Next question. What are common occurrences in which a commercial insurer drops or terminates coverage from a business?
I'll talk.
Yeah, go for it.
It can be, you can be dropped, canceled, or non-renewed as a result of too many claims. So if you file a lot of claims, just like your auto insurance, if you present too many claims to an insurance company, they may determine you no longer qualify, you're at risk, that they're not willing to no longer accept, and they would have to cancel or non-renew. They do have to send you a notice in a timely fashion. You can always protest that cancellation with us, and we would make sure that they have, number one, done it properly, and number two, that the reason they're canceling you does comply with their underwriting guidelines. Another reason can be, say, for a commercial auto insurance policy, and you add a new driver and they run that that employee's driving record or their claims history and decide that person, so they will notify you they're not going to insure that employee, and they're going to cancel your auto insurance, or you can exclude that employee and not allow them to operate your vehicle. Another reason can be if they feel you've intentionally misrepresented information. Again, you've got that auto policy, that commercial auto policy. You hire someone, they're really a great employee, but maybe they made a bad error in judgment and got a DUI. And so but you really like this employee, other than that, a great employee, it was just a lapse, a one-time thing. So you're just not telling them that person's operating your vehicles. Person has an accident, the insurance company finds out. That's misrepresentation. Misrepresentation can be a reason that they could immediately cancel your policy. So you have to make sure you give them accurate information on when you fill out that application and they ask you questions. So you have to make sure you are honest and truthful in answering all the questions. Those are generally the most common reason is claims history. You've presented too many claims and you no longer qualify under their guidelines.
Next question, does cyber liability cover cyber ransom?
So, likely. And with these policies, I would just be very clear that you understand what is in each individual policy because these can be different from policy to policy.
Very good. Next question. What if a claim of harm or damages is not at a physical business? For example, I'm developing a learning platform for healthcare professionals. What if they claim the learnings led them astray and led them to harm?
Generally,
Um,
that is going to be covered. It doesn't, it again, it can be indirect consequences that you are going to be held liable for. What you may want to consider also in this situation, but I talked to a producer, there is something Patty didn't really go into. It's a type of professional liability coverage. Most people are familiar with it when you're talking about medical providers, and that's called medical malpractice insurance. For other types of professions, it's called errors and omissions coverage. And that may be another coverage that you would like to speak or should speak to a producer about. The short form, we call it E&O coverage. It's errors and omissions. Insurance agents and producers are required by the state of Maryland to purchase errors and omissions coverage to protect Maryland consumers if that insurance producer does something wrong in quoting and binding insurance policies. So it may be another type of coverage you want to talk to a producer about. It's getting an errors and omissions policy.
Thank you. All right. Does the timing matter when you apply for flood insurance? Example, during or outside hurricane season?
um, like I mean, I did say that there's a 30-day waiting period, but other than that, no. Other than that, the rate is going to be the rate.
All right. If you work from home, does the business insurance cover the whole house or just one room you use as the office? Even if you might get client visits or staff events or meetings at your home.
So sometimes your homeowner's insurance self can cover your small business, but in a situation where you had a separate policy, I'm going to defer to Mary Jo for those details.
It's going to depend on the terms of your policy. You're going to have to read the policy. If you hold meetings at your home, it could be around the kitchen table, but you hold meetings at your home, and you don't just have a separate little office space where you meet clients, but you're going to need to discuss that with your producer. Hey, I have an office space and clients come to the home and I take them into the office space to meet with them and discuss business. Or, hey, I hold meetings in my home where I have a group of people come and I do presentations. So you want to speak to your insurance producer and let them know exactly what you do and what types of activities occur in your home so that they can make sure that you are properly covered. You may need some endorsements to your policy. And policies vary between company and company. So again, it's really important when you talk to the producer, when you're securing your policies, that you give them all the information you can think of.
Right. Thank you. Can you explain more on insurance in intellectual properties?
I'm not quite sure. Intellectual properties are, again, the prior question was someone that's developing some kinds of plans. Maybe you're developing a continuing ed program for a specific profession. That may be considered an intellectual property. Maybe you're writing a cookbook and your recipes may be considered. So it's generally intellectual properties are non-tangible things. They're not going to be an artwork you create or a craft or a product. It's going to be more, again, things that are held in the brain. Generally, business property coverage covers that. What your intellectual property is something you should discuss. And I don't want to keep saying go back to your producer, but that's what you're going to do to make sure that you're not purchasing a one-size-fits-all product, that you're buying a policy that meets and fits your specific need. So if you, and I can't say again, because intellectual properties are so varied and vast, I can't say something, well, this type of intellectual property would need this kind of coverage. It's generally covered under business products because your business product, because that's what your product is that intellectual property. So talk to your producer, let them know what it is you develop, what you create. It could be you're an author and you're writing a book or a manuscript. So again, talk to your producer and
Mary Jo,
yes.
can I ask you just for clarification, where is the risk? Is this the risk is your intellectual property being stolen?
It can be stolen or it could be lost. So if your
Okay.
intellectual property is contained on a computer and the computer is hacked, and that would be where it's stolen, someone somehow or another steals that, or you don't have a hard copy and the computer crashes and you lose it that way. They're going to want documentation, but it's generally, most of the time, it's going to be theft of intellectual property, but it can be a loss of intellectual property. But most of the time, it's going to be theft.
Okay. Just a couple more questions. How much coverage is recommended for a small beauty or service-based business when renting a space?
So I will say that that is just going to depend. Even the definition of small, it's gonna depend on all the variables that make up that risk. They're renting a space, they're not insuring the actual building itself, but they are insuring all of the other risks. And so this is just one of those situations where I don't think anyone can give you a good estimate. You need to work with somebody. Yeah, there just
And
needs to
here's
be a lot.
something, Patty, they need to consider. If you're renting a space, you need to see what the lease is going to require you to have as well. So when you meet with the producer, you will need to let them know the lease is requiring that I carry X amount of liability insurance. See this a lot with restaurants as well. If they're leasing a space and to operate a restaurant, usually the owner of the property will have very specific amounts of liability coverage they want the business to have. So look at the requirements of the person in the lease, and then talk to your producer and let them know what the lease requires.
Okay. Is product liability insurance important if I sell my own products?
Product liability insurance?
Yes,
I,
is
yes.
so the answer is yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
Okay.
It's what's going to protect you if something happens with that product and someone feels they were harmed by the use of your product. Because as Patty explained earlier, it's going to provide you no out-of-pocket cost to defend you in a lawsuit. And then if that person gets a judgment against you, gets awarded damages, then the insurance company is going to pay it. That's a personal decision, but I think it's important. But it's a personal decision whether or not you think you're going to need that. And I guess it depends on also the product you sell.
We just had another one come in. Do insurers use credit scores when determining rates?
So with auto insurance rates, in the state of Maryland, they can. And the Maryland Insurance Administration publishes a rate guide to make it a little bit easier on consumers to see which companies. We have an asterisk to tell you which companies are using credit score and which companies are not. So with regards to auto insurance in the state of Maryland, they absolutely can, and it can be up to it can be up to 40% of the total premium. I cannot make any comments about that in any other state. And I don't know if Mary Jo has any other comments on that.
Yeah, I'm not sure, other than it's definitely used in auto, and most auto insurers do use it. There are a few that don't, but I can tell you the majority, especially all the big companies that you see advertising on television, pretty much all of them use credit score on auto. I'm not sure on commercial whether they do or not. You can ask the producer when you're applying, or ask the insurance company, and they'll let you know if they are or aren't.
We had another one come in. They keep coming. Does product liability insurance cover problems or damages when using a third-party seller like Amazon or Etsy, where they get it directly from third-party manufacturer?
Product liability can come back to you, the person that manufactured that, even if you're selling it through a third-party seller like Amazon or Etsy. The person purchasing the item, if they claim the item injured them or caused them harm or caused damage to their property, the manufacturer still can be held liable. And I can tell you, generally, there's something called the shotgun approach. When people file lawsuits, they will name every potential entity that could be involved. So they could sue you and Amazon as well. So generally, selling your item through a third-party seller does not protect you from a liability suit.
Trisha or Patty and Mary Jo, I really want to thank you for all the information that you have provided us today. It's been a lot, but it was great information. I cannot I learned some things, and I thought I knew a lot about insurance, and I didn't. The next slide that we do have is the survey for today's webinar. If you could please complete the satisfaction survey. If you use the QR code, and that'll allow you to do that feedback, and we can follow up with an email. We appreciate your feedback. It's important to us to be able to offer these webinars for your knowledge-based learning. And there will be a follow-up to the webinar in 1 to 2 weeks. It'll have questions and answers. Any questions or that were asked that weren't answered, we will get those to you shortly through our presenters also too. All right, that's all I have for today. Again, thank you, Patty and Mary Jo, for all your knowledge and taking the time out of your day.